know I have a labyrinth sticker. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Center for Spiritual Living. It's so good to see so many faces here tonight for our inaugural movie. This is a movie about Rumi. It's called Rumi, Poet of the Heart. It's about 90 minutes long, and it's a documentary kind of on his life story with lots of poetry and some beautiful music woven in between there. And so you're going to see some of the best interpreters of Rumi's work reading some of his poetry in here. So we have popcorn available. It is organic skinny pop, so pretty much all the calories are gone. And there's nothing bad in there at all. No, look at this, nothing artificial. It's gluten-free, no GMOs. You can't go wrong with it. So we have plenty of bags of that. We also have coffee and hot water that's brewing right now. It's going to be at least 30 minutes before it's ready. You're welcome to have that if you have a lid on the cup. You do not bring it in here without a lid on the cup. So, quit rattling the bags, okay? So we're so glad to have you here joining us with this movie. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off and get started right now. So I'll turn it over to Joe here, our master of all things media. Joe.
Funding for this program has been provided by the Friends of Poetry and by the Witter Binner Foundation for Poetry.
In the town of Konya, in central Turkey, in the middle of the 13th century, a prominent religious scholar named Jalaluddin Rumi was suddenly separated from his teacher and spiritual friend. In his grief, he took hold of a column and began turning. Verses of poetry began pouring out of him. Remarkable poetry. His students wrote the words down. 700 years later, Rumi's poetry is being discovered in the West. He is, in fact, the best-selling poet in America. Come to the orchard in spring. There is light and wine and sweethearts in the pomegranate flowers. If you do not come, these do not matter. If you do come, these do not matter. Rumi was born September 30th, 1207, near Balkh, Afghanistan, which was then part of the Persian Empire. When Rumi was still a child, his family was forced to flee the oncoming armies of Genghis Khan. After years of travel, they settled in Konya, Turkey, an important stop on the Silk Road and a meeting point of many cultures: Islamic, Judeo-Christian, Hindu, and Buddhist. Rumi's father became the head of a Sufi learning community. The Sufis are an ancient spiritual order, and according to many Sufis, the essential truths of Sufism exist in all religions.
The Sufis are a remarkable band in the history of religions. They are the mystics of Islam. And as the mystics of Islam, the Sufis, we can connect with because they're talking about these wonderful, sublime truths which have a way of piercing directly into the human heart wherever it is.
The Sufis used to walk, down several roads, visiting with the Christians, visiting with Islam, visiting in all of the great religions, really. I mean, that's part of the nature of this kind of fluid imagination. It crosses boundaries. It penetrates, and it even slips by, and it works by way of humor. It works by way of stunning imagery. It works in many different ways, as if to keep bringing people to some deep human well.
Upon his father's death, Rumi became the head of the learning community. His life seems to have been a fairly normal one for a religious scholar, teaching, meditating, helping the poor, until the late fall of 1244, when he met a stranger, a wandering dervish, Shams of Tabriz.
Rumi's genius was triggered by an actual human being, an encounter with this mysterious figure, Shams of Tabriz.
He was an intense, fierce mountain meditator. Those kind of people, like Thoreau magnified 5 times.
The connection between Shams and Rumi is, one of the great stories of learning and what we nowadays call mentoring. But it's almost of an order beyond what people mean when they mean to learn from someone, because it means to almost, what seemed to happen was a sudden knowing.
One can see here in Shams an older man who is outside the Orthodox spiritual community, who comes in and helps a younger man who is deeply embedded in that Orthodox spiritual community. And then there's a kind of explosion.
What Rumi says, he says he was raw, then he got cooked, and then he was burned. And that means when his heart only melted through his love for Shams, that this new experience enabled him to understand what he was talking about before.
And he took Rumi's book knowledge and he said, now you have to live what you've been reading about. Pushed all his books into the fountain. That's one story of how they met. And Rumi and he went off into this practice called conversation, or sobet, in which they disappeared evidently for weeks at a time. In this conversation between the personal and the deep self.
So this is the poem, I'm Not Saying This Right, which of course might mean that I might not say the poem right. So I'm not saying this right. You bind me, and I tear away in a rage to open out into air, a round brightness, a candle point, all reason, all love. This confusing joy is your doing, this hangover, your tender thorn. You turn to look, I turn. I'm not saying this right. I'm a jailed crazy who ties up spirit women. No, I'm Solomon. What goes, come back. What goes, comes back. Come back. We never left each other. A disbeliever hides all disbelief, but I will say his secret now. More and more awake, getting up at night, spinning and falling in love with Shams, falling with love for Shams, spinning and spinning, falling in love with Shams, falling with love for Shams, falling with love for Shams.
And so Rumi became a poet then, became a real poet, became infused. The whole spirit came into him. And so it's one of the great love affairs of the world, the one between Shams and Rumi. And they loved each other, not sexually, but they loved each other in the heart.
Why does it impress people so much? Because it's a love that is beyond gender, beyond age, beyond sex, beyond species. It is the essence of love.
The two oceans met each other and the force of love of God. Because the earth has many oceans. All the time they meet. And once happened to meet in the land of Konya, Turkey, 700 years ago.
When you feel your lips becoming infinite and sweet, like a moon in a sky. When you feel that spaciousness inside, Shams of Tabriz will be there too. Something opens our wings. Something makes boredom and hurt disappear. Someone fills the cup in front of us. We taste only sacredness.
The relationship between Rumi and Shams is actually a reminder to us that all relationships have that potential, and that when we fall in love, then we actually are entering a spiritual domain of awareness. Romantic lovers are confused. That's a very spiritual state, to be confused. You know, Rumi says himself, he says, label me and define me, and you'll starve yourself of yourself. Nail me down in a box with cold words, and that box will be your coffin, because I don't know who I am. I'm in astounding, lucid confusion. That's the state of love.
There was a lot of jealousy among Rumi's students over this. Jealousy is one of the main impulses in the human race, you know. So no one knows exactly the truth, but some feel that what happens is that the students killed Shams, hid the body. Rumi then went out in the backyard, and there was a pole there. And in his grief, he kept going round and round and round and round the pole. And this is the beginning of the whirling dervishes, when it was done out of grief, which is terrifically interesting. That's how all that great poetry started, was in grief, the thing that we avoid the most. And in that time, he would begin to speak the lines, speak them out. They'd all appear in rhyme and meter, perfectly done. And then when he came out, the students would say, "Oh my God, that's tremendous, you know, write that down." No, he said, "No, let's keep dancing, let's go. Well, that's only words."
Rumi says everything is for the beloved. Everything is for the friend. And my understanding of that is that there is a presence that we feel in the beauty that we see outside of us. We feel it in a November sunset. We feel it in a child sleeping, in a child dancing, playing soccer. We feel it in a group of friends making supper on Sunday night. He would say that feeling is a presence that is both outside of us and tending us and inside us. When we feel like the jewel-like quality of our own inner awareness, that also is the friend. And this inner-outer presence is addressed directly in many of Rumi's poems. he says that wonderful pronoun you, and you don't quite know who it is, it's that presence. When it's cold and raining, he says, you are more beautiful. And the snow brings me even closer to your lips. The inner secret, that which was never born, you are that freshness, and I am with you now. I can't explain the goings or the comings. You enter suddenly, and I am nowhere again, inside the majesty. I, you, he, she, we. In the garden of mystical lovers, these are not true distinctions. I, you, he, she, we.
I feel very grateful to Coleman Barks for having introduced me to a world that I knew existed, that I yearned for, that there was an agony of wishing in my heart, but I didn't know how to find it. I had found it through other means, through other poets, but never with the intensity and passion of Rumi. So I owe a great debt of gratitude to Coleman Barks to bringing me to that world.
We know Rumi through his poetry, but in a sense it isn't his poetry because his poetry was in Persian, Farsi, and we read him in English. And the difficulties, the problems, also the mysterious connection that occurs, but also a distance in translation, is an abiding factor for all translators, but especially for poets.
First time I ever heard of Rumi was at one of Robert Bly's conferences in 1976, when he handed me a book of scholarly translations by A.J. Arbery, and he said, these poems need to be released from their cages, you know. And so I began rephrasing Arbery's English. And in the course of that, a sequence of coincidences happened, and I met a Sufi teacher, Bawa Muhayyiddin. And he told me to do this work. And if I had not sat in his presence for about 9 years on and off, I would have no idea what Rumi was about or what he did.
I believe in both translations and versions. In a translation, one has to know the language. For example, Spanish, when you translate Neruda. And then Neruda's contemporary, and so you can feel the turns and you can feel the sorrow where it is in the sentence and which words have tremendous sorrow, even in Spanish, and continue them. And then you follow the emotional mood of that line. And then as a translator, I'm responsible for the accuracy. I still may make many mistakes. I will always find a speaker who knew Spanish and English in the cradle, because that's where the sounds are first heard. A version is a different thing for me. I found Kabir, I thought they were so fantastic that I thought, well, what would this sound like if it were written today? So I made a guess at the lines, and they're not accurate. You're making a guess. You're bringing it up to modern times, you're putting in... But the aim of those translations, the aim of versions, is to bring in poets so unusual, so amazing, that you'd rather have an inaccurate translation than none at all.
Well, I work with scholars who give me literal versions of poems from the Persian. The more literal, the better for me. So John Moyne, and evidently, Reynold Nicholson's version of the, translation of the Mathnawi is very literal. I take what they give me, which is literal English, and then try to make a poem that's valid in American right now. So I put it into our tradition, which is most attuned to spiritual questions, and that is the free verse of Whitman and Emily Dickinson and Gary Snyder. And in terms of the musicality of the Persian, we don't try to reproduce that at all. It's densely rhymed within words and within the middle words, and that's almost unreproducible in English.
مرده بودم زنده شدم گریه بودم خنده شدم دولت عشق آمد و من دولت پاینده شدم گفت که تو شیخ شدی قبله این جمع شدی شیخ نیم جمع نیم دود پراکنده شدم گفت که با بال و پری من پر و بالت ندهم در هوس بال و پرش بی پر و پرکنده شدم I don't know. It's quite difficult to understand it and easy as well.
More translators work on a text, the better, because every version gives you something else, because it's through the eye of that particular poet or translator. He sees more this word or more that version.
But somehow, the cork comes out of the bottle again, and the genie is out, so to speak. With reference to an old story where it's uncorked and the spirit of the thing comes to life again, which has certainly happened through Coleman Barks, Robert Bly, and the other translators.
Rumi can keep a lot of, and should keep a lot of translators busy, because he is a kind of universe with a lot of different moods and modes, and I may be missing a lot of them.
This is the story told by the reed. بشنو از نی چون حکایت می کند. Or بشنو از این نی چون حکایت می کند.
There is no as, there is no any as.
There is no as.
بشنو این نی چون حکایت می کند.
Oh, بشنو این نی چون حکایت می کند. I was born in Afghanistan, the land where Rumi came from. When I was a little girl, my father, I remember him reading Rumi or conversing through Rumi with his friends in the moonlights until 2 or 3 o'clock in the mornings. I connected back to Rumi after my father passed away, actually.
آتش است این بانگو.
I went and found and bought a nice book of Rumi's Masnawi, and I came home and I started reading it. I realized that this is not something that I can do by myself.
Who has not this love, it's nothing.
It's nothing.
Right.
Like a wind.
Yeah,
Might as well die.
exactly.
آتش عشق است کاندر نیفتاد. I knew I needed a teacher, so I found Zari through friends, and it's been really wonderful working with her. Somebody who has the knowledge of the poetry and Rumi and the culture. Liquor, but it doesn't quite mean it's a metaphor for
It's
like
wine,
that.
but it's just all about love.
She's a very tough teacher, yes. Have to do it right, you know, you can't deviate. Or maybe I should say it's the Afghan way. It was the same way back home, too.
Listen to the story told by the reed of being separated. Since I was cut from the reed bed, I have made this crying sound. Anyone apart from someone she loves understands what I say. Anyone pulled from a source longs to go back.
Rumi, the dominant note in his poetry is, of course, longing. The longing of the soul for the divine. His favorite image for this was the reed flute. That flute is noted for the plaintive sound that it makes.
And the reed was played on by human beings, but the reed was once in the mud of the river bottom. And then it was pulled out. So it carries with it the grief of having once been in the river bottom and now just in the air. And he said, all of us were once in the mud of God. We have now been pulled out. So every time someone plays or does any poem, it'll always have in it that grief of having lost the mud of the riverbed of God.
A craftsman pulled a reed from the reed bed, cut holes in it, and called it a human being. Since then, it's been wailing a tender agony of parting, never mentioning the skill that gave it life as a flute. Boy, that changes the whole idea of being a victim in the world. It changes the entire suggestion of what the lament of being alive is about, the tender agony of parting. We live parted from something. That's great.
You know, he says the reed can't make the noise, can't make the reed music, can't make the flute music until it is plucked from the reed bed and carved with 9 holes like the human body. And then it can make language when it's separated. Therefore, language is a proof that we're separated. The fact that we use language is part of our nostalgia for union.
Every soul has their own broken heart because if the soul is not united at the essence of it, of itself, of course, has broken hearts.
Love is the goal of all other goals. You know, some time ago I read something, some Nobel laureate won the prize, and he said, you know, this is a consolation prize. I was looking for love.
In the early morning hour, just before dawn, lover and beloved wake and take a drink of water. She asks, "Do you love me or yourself more, really? Tell the absolute truth." He says, "There's nothing left of me. I'm like a ruby held up to the sunrise. Is it still a stone or a world made of redness? It has no resistance to sunlight. This is how Hallett said, 'I am God,' and told the truth. The ruby and the sunrise are one. Be courageous and discipline yourself. Completely become hearing and ear. And wear this sun ruby as an earring. Work. Keep digging your well. Don't think about getting off from work. Water is there somewhere. Submit to a daily practice. Your loyalty to that is a ring on the door. Keep knocking, and the joy inside will eventually open a window and look out to see who's there.
At the time of night prayer, as the sun slides down, the route the senses walk on closes. The route to the invisible opens. The angel of sleep then gathers and drives along the spirits, just as the mountain keeper gathers his sheep on a slope. That's the image. And what amazing sights he offers to the descending sheep. Cities with sparkling streets, hyacinth gardens, emerald pastures. The spirits see astounding beings. Turtles turn to men. Men turn to angels. When sleep erases the banal. I think one could say that the spirit goes back to its old home. It no longer remembers where it lives, and it loses its fatigue. It carries around in life so many griefs and loads, and trembles under their weight. They're gone. It's all well. They are gone. It's all well. All right, so that's lovely.
In the Sufi orders, the one that was generated by Rumi, the Mevlevi order, their distinctive ritual is a circling motion which has caused those Sufis to be called the whirling dervishes. And it comes from Rumi himself, who found himself drawn to circle pillars in his mosque. He would cup his hand and around a pillar and lean back, and found that that motion, for some, who knows what the symbolism is, maybe planets circling the sun, would just release a torrent of ecstatic poetry. And much of his poetry just came spilling out of him in that motion. Now that took hold, and his followers developed a similar ritual of circling, in their case, their shake rather than a pillow.
The secret turning in us makes the universe turn. Head unaware of feet, and feet head. Neither cares. They keep turning. The secret turning in us makes the universe turn. It's an image of surrender and discipline at the same time. If you've seen it done, you see that. They go, and then they just open and flower out, and they never fall. They're always in total synchrony. And they know where they are. They're in concert with the galaxies and the molecules and all these things that go like this. That's what I've always loved about the Sufis. They say that the great world is inside. This world that looks so huge and magnificent is the microcosm. The macrocosm is our inner life. It just reverses science. Or maybe the new science is saying something like that. That the inner world is the giant place, and the world, the outside world that we see, is the language that we use to speak of the inner.
If we look deeply enough, actually, into the heart of science itself, we might discover that what Rumi and other great seers and sages and the wisdom traditions were saying was actually true. At the heart of creation, there is only that field of love, that ultimately even our material success comes from the ability to love and have compassion, comes from the capacity to experience joy and ecstasy and share it with others.
Inside water, a water wheel turns. A star circulates with the moon. We live in this night ocean, wondering, what are these lights? I am so small, I can barely be seen. How can this great love be inside me? Look at your eyes. They're small, but they see enormous things.
Rumi says, on resurrection day, your body testifies against you. Your hand says, I stole money. Your lips, I said meanness. Your feet, I went where I shouldn't. Your genitals, me too. These voices will make your praying sound hypocritical. So let the body's doings speak openly now, without your saying a word. As a student walking behind a teacher says, this one knows more clearly than I the way. That's an amazing thing at the end, that your body in certain ways knows your way to the Spirit better than your mind does. And the body forgives a great deal, you know.
Rumi gives the way to live better, to love more, to be more comfortable in this world, that we have a lot of difficulties for everything. But with Rumi, you feel more safe. You love it. You see the world in the other ways with love, and it opens your eyes.
Yeah. Ready? Okay. Inside water, a water wheel turns. A star circulates with the moon. We live in the night ocean, wondering, what are these lights? You have said what you are. I am what I am. Your actions in my head. My head here in my hands, with something circling inside. I have no name for what circles so perfectly. Yeah. I heard a Sufi say once, he said, he asked me what religion I was, and I just threw up my hands. You know, I don't know. He said, that's good. The universe is, love is the religion, and the universe is the book. So just read it, your experience, you know. Yeah.
The signs of God are in the world, and the world is in your heart.
Yeah. But I love books.
The manuscript of nature. The Naya Khan talks about the sacred manuscript of nature is the only scripture.
Yeah. Some of us are just hooked on books, you know. I can't give them up. Spring. And everything outside is growing. Even the tall cypress tree. We must not leave this place. Around the lip of the cup we share, these words, my life is not mine. If someone were to play music, okay? Okay.
I couldn't hear my bion in there for some reason very much, but I wasn't.
I'll tell you a little story about my granddaughter, Bryony. Here she is. This is the beloved. We have an organization that we belong to, Bryony and I. It's called Club. And we meet every Monday night after dinner. And we do science experiments, and we draw pictures. And one day, we were going up to her room in the new house that they're going to move into soon. And there's nothing in that room but just an office desk. Some students had been renting out the house, and there's just this metal office desk. And we were going to sit on the floor there and draw pictures for club. And she reached into the desk and pulled off a bit of an adding machine tape and ripped it off. And she said, "Granddaddy, this is your permanent ticket to club." I said, "I never had a permanent ticket before." So I put it in my pocket. And while we were drawing pictures, I pulled it out and noticed that it had this very careful calligraphy on it. And it turns out that adding machine roll, some student had copied out the entire book, every poem in birdsong, these little poems, on that thin adding machine roll. And she had ripped that off, the first 3.5 poems, and given it to me as my permanent ticket to club.
This is old Celtic thing, that there's very little difference between a song and a poem, between a poem and a story, between a story and a prayer. So that anytime someone is singing a song or telling a story or telling or reading poetry to a child, they're also inviting the child into a prayer. And there's never a need to take that down to the level of the child at all, because something in the child already knows all this and is waiting to hear it again. So that parents or teachers that give great poetry or stories to children are feeding this old soul that's in the child and are reassuring the child that they've come to the right world. That yes, it may be confusing and the world may be increasingly chaotic, but this is the world where those words are said.
I think if we bring back poetry into the lives of our children, we will transform the world. We look for all kinds of solutions for our everyday problems. Most of the solutions are purely materialistic. You know, if you want to take care of the elderly, have better old folks' homes with more money in them. If you want to take care of inner cities, you pour in the funds over there and it'll solve. That's not the crisis of our age. And even if we do see poverty over there, that's the expression of a deeper impoverishment. And that impoverishment is the soul and the spirit screaming for nourishment. And that nourishment can come from poetry. Poetry, as T.S. Eliot said, is a raid on the inarticulate.
On the level of 1 to 10, it's about a 2 to read great works on the spirit from the page. On a level of 1 to 10, it's like a 9 to hear a human being speak it, especially one you love. That brings the spirit inside the house, inside the family, inside your genetic line. It's gorgeous, fantastic. So I would rather have someone read to my children 3 poems than for them to read 30 on the page.
To read a poem privately is a beautiful, can be devotional, prayerful thing. But to have the poem fall on the drum of the ear, that's different. Etheridge Knight, the great African-American poet, used to say, the words from my mouth are beating on the drum in your ear. So don't think this is casual.
I don't know why he should come back and be so prevalent 700 years from his lifetime. It may be a simple thing. It may be it's because he's telling a truth that we are ready to hear, and he tells it so clearly and with such gentleness and with such elegant images that we delight to hear his stories.
When something is true, it can live 700 years or more. We read Homer or we read people who are older than Rumi, and their beauty is just as new today as it was then.
Very hard to understand for ordinary people, but they can feel the smell, the fragrance, or feel the touch. Another saying, the connection with the soul. Even 700 years later, they can touch the human hearts. And they do, and they will.
Rumi is like bread. It's not like caviar that you can have it once a while or never in your life. But Rumi, like a bread, you will have it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, all the day, okay? And then for that, you pass really every day with Rumi, not once a day. I pass now as well. I pass maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, like this with Rumi. And I feel in paradise. I fly with Rumi. I go to the sky. I will forget that I'm on the earth.
He said, I go into the Christian church, and I go into the Muslim mosque, and I go into the Jewish synagogue, and I see one altar. He saw a single impulse to worship at the core of all religions. When he died, members of every faith in Konya came to his funeral, honoring him as they felt a way of deepening into their own faith.
That is the reason everyone was there. Maybe every nation, they love their own prophets. Every order, they like their own sheikhs. But everyone loved Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi.
He says, I'm not Christian, not Jew, not Muslim, not Hindu, not Buddhist. He says, I belong to the beloved, have seen the two worlds as one, and that one called to and know first, last, outer, inner, only that breath, breathing, human being.
This we have now is not imagination. This is not grief or joy, not a judging state or an elation or a sadness. Those come and go. This is the presence that doesn't. It's dawn, Hussam. Here in the splendor of coral, inside the friend, in the simple truth of what Halaj said. What else could human beings want? When grapes turn to wine, they're wanting this. When the night sky pours by, it's really a crowd of beggars, and they all want some of this. This that we are now. Created the body, cell by cell, like bees building a honeycomb. The universe and the human body grew from this, not this, from the universe and the human body. This that we have now is not imagination. This is not grief or joy, not a judging state or an elation or a sadness. Those come and go. This is the presence that doesn't. It's dawn, Hussam. What else could human beings want?
Comments, questions?
What was the name of the documentary again?
Rumi, Poet of the Heart. Yeah, Karen.
It's dawn. What else could humans want?
It's good humans want. The breeze at dawn has something to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. So many lines. I mean, sometimes I get lost in the poetry, but there's so many lines that just those few words that are just so profound. Don't go back to sleep.
I thought it was interesting how they talked about the translations.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wondered, because I just wondered ancient Farsi, Persian, and then modern English. That's kind of a lot of steps in there.
Well, I think when they were talking about the three different scholars that have translated, and they're each saying the same thing. We want lots of translations of it so that we can glean the essence of it. What it reminded me of is the way that so many of our spiritual teachers do the same thing. They will read several different versions of the same book to find the essence of truth, to find those golden threads of truth that are running through there. And so, having all of that information and then feeling into whatever it is that's coming through for that translation of it, I think it's really powerful. For that. Well, we have coffee, we have cookies, more popcorn than I will ever need. I'd love to have you sit and have a little bit of fellowship. You're welcome to come on in, bring your coffee, popcorn, and so forth back in here if you want. Move the chairs around a little bit. On our Wednesday evenings, we don't take a collection, but we do have a beautiful box that I personally decorated in the back. And in the back of your chairs, there is an envelope. If you would like to give a tax-deductible donation, just identify put your contact information on there, and we'll be happy to send you a tax letter at the end of the year for your contributions. We are a 501c3, and we receive most of our funding through donations. And so we're here for another hour or so. You're welcome to enjoy a little fellowship. The coffee is really good. I'm not sure what I did, but it's really good. So We have decaf and we have regular, and then we also have hot water with tea and cocoa, and cookies are great. I just picked them up at Costco. They're really good. So please, enjoy yourself. Thank you. Our next Wednesday is going to be mind-body connection. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can use our things like Rumi to heal our bodies. As they were saying in the thing, the body is not separate from us. It's just part of it. So we're going to talk about different aspects of mind-body connection next week. So thank you.